I would assume he is, and this is a villain of course, again, we've been talking about for quite some time, wanting to see him in the DCU. I just hope, Brian, that this isn't a one and done. What are your thoughts on this possibility?
I would be shocked, if this is a one and done.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Gen Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Brian Schultz. What's going on, Brian?
News, man. News is picking up. We got a little Marvel animation to check out this week. I've been watching a lot of other stuff. I don't know if we'll talk about it here in the void, but I will just throw a very quick free promotion Amazon's way. If you guys are not in on the Terminal List sort of IP, Dark Wolf just wrapped up. And I would say if you're not familiar with it, I'm going to give you the unusual recommendation. Watch Dark Wolf before you watch the original series. That was the correct chronological order. And my wife's going through it that way, even though I saw the original first. I think she's enjoying it more because she's seeing it in the true order. But both series, different genres, both excellent, including, I will say, for the film nerds out there, midway through the season, Dark Wolf does a single cam military encounter that is quite cool.
That seems to be the trend, which is, and we'll talk about it later when we get to Mando, but which I don't get why they didn't do it, but whatever. DC Roundup. I know we've been getting we've been putting out a lot of Batman stuff, DCU stuff, but we got to keep it rolling because the news keeps on coming.
Yep.
Brainiac hints for Man of Tomorrow. This is a villain, Brian, that we've been waiting for quite some time, and we may get it. Gunn talks on some Batman details that we touched on. He also teases the new character announcements and talks Batman, Wonder Woman casting, and Netflix looking to put in their bid. Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I'm interested to find out the timeline on all of this, Brian, because have we heard anything from Skydance on their bid?
We're waiting for what the number is going to be. This Netflix thing that we'll talk about is so exactly what we alluded to, that this would be shopped, and depending on who you are, you might look at these assets differently. Netflix is clearly looking at these assets in a different way because of how they're structured versus how Paramount Skydance wants it. So this is what makes it, if you're Warner Brothers, you have a fiduciary duty, right, to kind of do right by your shareholders, but your job is to maximize value. And what's interesting here is there's different ways to unlock value. So I think it'll be very interesting to see. I kind of am still waiting for Amazon to kind of throw their hat in the mix just because they have the closest relationship with the DC IP. We know that. I find it hard to believe they will just kind of stand by and not at least put some feelers out. So waiting to see how elevated this gets. But I think that to steal the thunder of the details, it does feel like the train has left the station. The kinds of numbers that are being talked about and being thrown out, I think will be hard for Warner Brothers to just say, no, thanks, we're good, staying independent. I think it's becoming harder for that. The more people are at the table, the more the rebids start to go up. Like at some point, it's just the math is the math. And I don't know if David Zaslav will be able to kind of stop that to the extent that he really does want to still be at the controls.
25, 35, 75, 45, 55, 35, sold to the man with braids in his hair.
That's what it's going to be like, yo. This is going to get crazy. But let's start off with Brainiac and Man of Tomorrow, Brian. James Gunn puts out a photo of his, I believe, first draft they read on it, or second.
Second draft.
Second draft.
Yep.
With an anatomy-style head giving you view of its insides, the brain and whatever, right? So is he hinting at Brainiac? I would assume he is, and this is a villain of course, again, we've been talking about for quite some time, wanting to see him in the DCU. I just hope, Brian, that this isn't a one and done. What are your thoughts on this possibility?
I would be shocked, if this is a one and done. And nothing about James Gunn's work to date would suggest that it will be. Again, I am in this mindset of I believe he is trying to mirror these ideas of comic book issues or episodes of the famous animated shows where there clearly was this idea of, resolution but recurring villains, resolution but revisit storylines and characters. I firmly believe to introduce Brainiac is to give the DCU a little more connective tissue on the villain side. And I think the first thing that comes to my mind is how long, for the most part, have we talked about the MCU, even at its height, having a villain problem, right? There was always that critique. These kind of villains are kind of one note, and Thanos kind of broke out of that mold to some extent, but most of the time people felt less than satisfied with the villains.
Yes.
Brainiac is the white space where you hope for more, right? That's where you hope for, if you can execute this well and you can utilize his various powers and his shape-shifting and his intelligence and his ability to pull the strings without being present all the time. The ingredients have always been there, even if the degree of difficulty is somewhat high.
And DC has a couple. We have also Darkseid and perhaps some others that just don't deserve one outing, that are master manipulators and should be pulling strings to extend a much more expansive storyline. But we'll see. Any other details regarding Brainiac?
No, but I have to think, Gunn does nothing by accident. That is, and when he's already said Superman and Lex uniting for a bigger threat. There is rhyme and reason to him giving away the details, if that makes sense, right? Remember, we heard Matt Reeves say on the Batman, it's a mystery. Maximum, keep your cards closed, because I don't want any leaks.
Yeah.
James Gunn is giving you the backbone of this movie very deliberately. He clearly has a reason why he doesn't want to hide that this is coming. So I am fascinated to see exactly why that is, but I kind of applaud the boldness of saying, you guys are too smart for this. It's Superman and Lex versus Brainiac, and it brings in more of the universe.
I hope, and from what I've been hearing, there has been some explanation to Lex's anger or hatred towards Superman that they really didn't get into in the first movie, that they perhaps might get into the second one. And I think they missed out on an opportunity to already establish, yes, we already know that Lex hates Superman, and that's just what it is and what it's always been. But there has never been a clear reasoning, just amongst conversation as to why, right? But there have been some talks, about Lex being the guy of that world in terms of his genius and what he's been able to do, and has quite literally earned the adoration of the people. And this guy comes along and just takes it all instantly from him. I don't think they did a good job in establishing that in the first one. And I think they might explore some of that here to sort of, because why would Lex team up with Superman, right? There has to be some conversation that happens in that movie that sort of expands on that. Your thoughts on that?
I'm actually okay that he didn't explore it in Superman. I actually feel like a deeper character study of Lex in that movie might have distracted from Corn Sweat unfairly. As much as I do think there's a little bit of universe building bloat in Superman at points, because Gunn is really trying to get pieces on the board. I think the duality of, let's have a movie that is drops us into the world, gives us the respect of no origin story, hits us with this is what the world looks like. These characters all kind of know each other, and away we go. But we keep it firmly focused on Clark, and we keep it firmly focused on Superman. I think if you lead with that and then you come back around with, as Gunn has hinted, that the second one would be more from Lex's perspective and more of the study into Lex, I actually think that can really enhance the progression of the saga. And when you bring Brainiac into this, the thing I immediately think of is there's those things in comics and the animateds where Lex and Brainiac's relationship, or when they cross paths, there's a tension there where, like, at times they're aligned, but invariably because of Brainiac's superior technology, intellect, he winds up going beyond Lex's intent, right? I always think of the animated classic, right? Divided We Fall, where like Lex is the most horrified person in the room when it's revealed that Brainiac is inside him. Like the Justice League is shocked, and he looks like the double cross on him is actually bigger than everyone. And I keep thinking about that in the context of, you want to tell a Lex-centric story that introduces Brainiac, that actually is a better route to Brainiac, in my mind, than leading with Superman, if that makes sense. Show it with the two of them having their own kind of relationship that then splinters and forces Lex to turn, or forces Superman to turn to Lex as like, we got to do this together.
And that scenario introduced one of the greatest Flash moments.
Oh my God. That whole 4-episode sequence to me is like the high point of DC animated still to this day. And that's saying something, because their animated house was great at its height. But that 4-episode, from a Question Authority to Divided We Fall, is, and yes, Zack Snyder tried to riff on that. That's what he's trying to riff on in his version of Justice League. But the one in the animated is better, where he disappears into the Speed Force. That's the coolest, yeah. I think if Gunn pulls this off, and I have to say I'm very interested in his concepts here, there is a seed of, this is kind of like a twisted version of World's Finest that could leave an imprint on Superman for the future, if and when he inevitably crosses paths with DCU Batman, and they inevitably have to align. This is clearly a Superman-Lex partnership we know is going to be fraught with mistrust, betrayal. Like for Superman, it's going to be a hard lesson in like finding the good in Lex and living with the bad, right? And to me, if that's done well, you might lay a nice little foundation there for like in the future when Batman comes along, Superman's going to have this like, the last time I did this, man, I regret it worked out, but I was burned. I don't know if I want to, and we know Batman's not going to trust him as far as his kryptonite rock will let you, right? So I just had that in the back of my mind of like, there might be something very smart here that could be parlayed down the road.
Gunn talks Batman. I heard some things, Brian, and these are things that we had discussed with regards to the suit. And he had made reference to that and said, if this is what you care about, like I don't. Something to that effect. What are your thoughts on his approach to what people are perhaps expecting or want to see?
Context for this commentary is very key. I really think that. I don't think he's saying he doesn't care. I would never say he does. What he's saying is, and I'll give you the exact quote. He's saying that fandom, when it comes to something like this, attaches itself to these individual features in a character that he thinks are less important than getting the totality of the character and the storytelling right, which I would completely agree with. But so he says the specific question was the blue-gray suit, whether we would ever see it. And so he said, the person who asked him the question said, everyone wants to see this, that's That's a loaded statement, right? So Gunn
Yeah.
wouldn't take that. He said, no, quote, not everybody. It's not everybody because I have somebody saying, please give us this Batman. And then they put a picture of blue-gray Batman on Threads or whatever. And then someone else says, you're a piece of bleep. And I'm like, he's a piece of bleep because he likes that Batman. That's pretty harsh. He said, there's a religious aspect to so much of this stuff that's very uncomfortable because should Batman have white eyes? That's a big subject of conversation. And it's like, guys, is that what really matters? But those are the things that they care about. Should his utility belt stay yellow? Should he have the yellow crest around the bat? All of that stuff. And none of those things are what's ultimately important to me. What matters is character and story. And I think we have a really, really good story now for what's happening with Batman, end quote. You need the whole thing. He's not saying it doesn't matter. He's saying people are going too far in the one thing that they must have in their Batman above all else.
Yeah.
Which is why we broke
Okay.
it down. And we said, we broke it down and said, what are the essential elements we see? I will say from the early feedback, you know what I think is most interesting? There is a consensus saying we want the fighting and the tech. I think the early commentary that's come back on our first go at this, when we talked about how much do we need, they want the ninja and they want the gadgets. I don't disagree. I just think that's hard. I mean, that is going to be a challenge.
And also, shout outs to our listeners and people who comment. We don't need to see him fight all the time because his fighting ability is not going to get him out of everything. Is his smarts and his prep and the things that he does to be ready for whatever may come, and him being uh, aware to make decisions that may or may not be good, but must be done. So yeah, those little things, we'll see if Gunn can pull them off.
But I think what the people are saying is they need the fighting to be acrobatic. They need it to be cool, right? They need it to be the second, even if it might be 5 seconds, takes out a couple of guys, but it's how they shoot it, how they block it, how he uses his tools, and people are like, that's the baddest mother. That's what people want to see. It does, as you said, it doesn't have to be 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be like a brawl out nonstop through 100 guys. It just has to be the snippets they're going to show. He has to look more Bruce Lee than he's ever looked before, effectively, to people. And that's, like I said, the reality, like, it can be done because we've seen it. Like I said, I always point to Netflix when they put Charlie Cox in the Daredevil suit, he was still able to flip and do really cool ninja type stuff. But like, I remember when they put Val Kilmer in the bat suit in 1995, and he was like, this thing was like, I think it was like 60 pounds. Like the suit was like, and it's
Wow.
like, you can't fight. You can't look like a ninja when you're wearing 60 pounds of rubber. There's just no stunt that's gonna make you look like that. So that's where I mean, like, there's the practicality of how do you pull this off? And even Affleck, who looks, and his stunt double, who are very acrobatic in the warehouse scene in BVS, because he was bulky and because the suit was kind of bulky, he still looks heavy. Like he's really moving, but like he looks really kind of brawny. And I think what people are saying is in the comics and in the animated, he looks almost like a cat. Like he's kind of like in and out, like he's almost not there.
You know what movie I was watching the other day? I think it was yesterday or the day before. I think it was yesterday. Ninja Assassin, I think it
Oh,
was
yeah.
called.
I actually like that movie. I got kind of a guilty pleasure for some of that movie.
Dude, you know who I saw when I saw that movie?
You want Shang-Chi?
Shang-Chi.
You want Rand to be
What?
Shang-Chi?
That was Shang-Chi, yo. If you could change the name and just put Shang-Chi on it, I believe it.
There's some pretty badass martial arts in that movie. It's very stylized, but like and I don't know how he survives because he loses like every ounce of blood in his body. But his work with the I don't know what weapon it is with the chain. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous skills. Yeah.
Yeah. It was dope.
I don't interpret the commentary as saying we won't see blue and gray or we won't see that. I think he's just saying like story first. By the way, people have interpreted that last little comment as he's figured out the script for Brave and the Bold. And I'm still here to tell you, like, he's saying we have a good Batman story. Could be Brave and the Bold as originally conceived, but could be a reworked. He's not telling you that part of it yet. He's just saying, you see you Batman story. He feels like he's got an angle.
Gunn teases new character announcements and talks Batman, Wonder Woman. And what about Batman has he further given us? And what about the Wonder Woman casting?
So on Batman, he said he has a short list. And he said that he has people in mind. He said one name actor has already asked to play him, which I assume is Alan Ritchson, but he doesn't. He said it's a pretty big name actor has already approached him and asked to play him. But I don't know.
Is Alan Ritchson
So
that
that was
my
my question. Is that meant to put people off the scent? Is it somebody else bigger that this happened behind the scenes? Because Alan Ritchson's been very public about the meeting and about wanting this, and then telling us that at least publicly, Gunn said, no, I've got you penciled in for another part in the DCU. But anyway, he says he's got a short list. He's already started kind of conversations, and he has an idea of what he wants. I will say this because he comes up a lot. So the Brandon Sklenar thing, I was on a flight recently. I watched Drop, he's the co-star in with Megan Faye. And it was the first time I'd really seen him in a co-lead where he wasn't in 1923, which is a very rugged role. I think for him to be successful, I need to see a little lighter side of him. Because even in Drop, he's still kind of speaking in the same voice as his 1923 character, even though he's a photographer. And so he does a Batman voice very well, like a very deep-throated, low-tone, serious. I see what people see in terms of the face and the Batman voice. But even though he's on a date and he's actually a heroic character in this movie, I never get a real sense of levity from him, even when he's making a lighter comment, to where I was like, I think people might see him as not quite Pattinson emo, but similarly a little too, if they're looking for a tonal contrast, I don't know that he's at least shown us all the way there yet.
Let us know in the comment section below. Do we require a Bruce Wayne and Batman? These two people need to be different. Unless, obviously, he's talking to Alfred in his Batcave, right? But when he's in the public, Bruce Wayne has to be a little different. And that's why I say Alan Ritchson, because I've seen him.
I agree.
As the funny guy, as the playful guy. I've seen him in that. And I think he can do it no problem. But Brandon Sklenar has to sort of show that if we don't see it in his outings in different roles, hopefully we see it in this if he gets that role. Hopefully James Gunn sees it when he reads for that role. Forget about reading for Batman. They need to read for Bruce Wayne.
And I just think, to that point, the reason why I've harped on it and I use the Conroy example is think about what you saw in Superman and mentally install Bruce into places like the Daily Planet. Or if they're going, imagine a cocktail party with Nicholas Hoult is there and Lois Lane is there and Clark is there. This guy has to walk into the room and Lois Lane has to be ready to go home with him. I'm not kidding. That's how it has to be, right?
Yeah.
She's got to be I'm totally in love with Clark. Oh, who's that guy over there? It has to be like that.
Yeah.
And if he's dark or if he's fake or if he that won't do that. That will not do that.
Yeah. Wonder Woman.
James Gunn got involved in a conversation about how tall this character is supposed to be. You see this?
Yes,
so
I saw that.
They obviously find David Cornsweet, who is comics accurate 6'4". I would venture to say whoever he's got for DCU Batman is not going to be much shorter than that. Might even be about the same size. When you consider Nicholas Hoult is 6'3", right? We ain't going to have no 5'9" Batman. That's just not going to work, right? At this point, you got to have tall. So then people are like, well, Diana Themyscira in Amazon, she's taller than. And James Gunn was like, come on, man. Where am I going to find a 6'5", 6'6" Wonder Woman? So then he kind of was
weird.
He said, look, a taller Wonder Woman could actually look great next to Superman if he could find one. He said, but at the end of the day, for that character, it's much more about the chemistry and about the acting skill. And he said the height is not going to be a determining factor in the casting, which I think is just fine. Like I love comics accuracy, but like there is a point at which like you're just weeding the human population down to a field that's too small to really get a good cast.
That's forget about it. That I mean, you can probably find, but to look for someone like that, and then once you get the look for that person to again, like you said, have that chemistry. Does it look good on camera? All that plays a role, and to me, I think Adrian Horner is still probably the top of his list.
I think that's very possible. Now, I think, in fairness, they got a little lucky with Gal, right? Because she's 5'10", and then they put her in the heels and the boots, so she probably was 6 foot when she's in the costume. But I don't know, like, if she had been 4 inches shorter, would that have made Wonder Woman any less successful as a movie? I don't think so. Like, I don't think so. Arjona's 5'7", for example. That's fine. I mean, okay, if you're trying to cast somebody who's like 5 foot, all right, maybe that becomes a little bit of a problem. But like, 5'7" is just fine with the costume. I mean, the other thing that got my mind was that this becomes that big of a deal. You could always do the reverse Lord of the Rings and just make the effects to size up the character after the fact. I mean, at these day and age, you could do that, and it's if you really want a few extra inches of height on Wonder Woman, but. Also sounds like we're close though on this. He seems to be hinting in sort of this discussion that, like, again, either there's a short list or they might have someone that they haven't unveiled yet. I still am expecting this announcement to come before the end of the year. DCU Batman I could see coming next year. I think this one's coming before the end of this year. Because this movie just seems like it's on like a meteoric ascent to get made.
Yeah. We'll see. And Netflix.
Do you want to do the
Brian.
other characters he teased? Because there's one on there that you've been clamoring for. One of 3.
Who?
So he got pinged with a list on socials about could DC fans expect in the near future to hear a casting announcement specific for one of, weirdly, Blue Beetle. I think he's already said is Njolo still Blue Beetle, but someone has Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, and The Question, to which James Gunn said, you just might be in luck. So one of those might be coming. So you are rooting for The Question.
Hopefully it's Henry Cavill.
You are rooting for The Question.
Yeah, man. The Question. Yo, I would love a series with The Question, man, because he can really be the guy answering and telling us what could be happening, but is these because he's what's it called? Like what Mel Gibson was in that movie.
Conspiracy theory.
Conspiracy
yes.
theorist.
That's like literally what he is. He's a conspiracy theorist,
right? Yeah, exactly. So that would be so dope if we had a show, a series of The Question, just giving us insight into the next movie or the things that are happening for the big Justice movie, whatever it may be. But that for me is a dope.
This is also
idea.
for the record, for people not as familiar. This is also a character that would be in James Gunn's writing wheelhouse, because here's where you could twist the humor and have it be dark, because this guy is constantly seeing connection, conspiracy, ill intent in everyone. And part of what makes him fun is that, like, when for example, like, he's not afraid of the superpowered characters. Like, he will stand toe to toe with Superman and be like, basically, go ahead and make my day. Yeah.
He can't help himself. Yeah.
So that's part of what makes him kind of like fun, is that he is sort of unhinged. And that's why I say, I think for Gunn, I don't know if he would write him personally, but it does seem like a character he would have fun with. So it maybe 1 in 3.
It'll be dope if The Question starts theorizing that Batman is and Bruce Wayne are the same guy. And it's just like, people just like, yeah, whatever. That would be dope. But James Gunn, if he does it,
I also got to say, The
Good for
Question in this fictional world that is supposed to echo modern themes, could not come at a more appropriate time in this day of information and misinformation. I mean, this is all white shippies for the question. Everything. Wait, what is not conspiracy theory at this point, right?
It would have to be cleverly done, and you have so much to play with, and it'll be so interesting to see and hear the things that comes out of his mouth, and see certain things unfolding. It'll be dope. It will be dope. Question is, I think it would be hard to mess up the question. For James Gunn to mess
I
up
agree.
that.
I really hope it is that. Of the three that were listed, and I'm going to say, I don't think he was talking about Blue Beetle. If it's between Captain Atom and the question, I certainly hope it's the question.
And Netflix putting in their bid for a
Yes.
piece of the WB or the whole thing, but most likely a piece. What do you think is going on with Netflix? Being that, Brian, they haven't really entered the forum of theaters, right? They're strictly streaming. How would it work for them? How
So
would
I think what
this
they're
work for
looking
them?
at is the planned split of Warner Brothers, which is supposed to put effectively the television channels kind of on one side, which are struggling to make money and driven by ad revenue that's declining. And then what Netflix is interested in is the film studio and the IP assets. That's what they want. So what their pitch is going to be is they're probably looking at, we'll overpay effectively for the one piece of it, and we will leave the other piece behind. Paramount wants both pieces because, as I said, they own CBS, they own Nickelodeon, they own MTV, they own linear television as well as streaming assets, as well as having a movie studio. So for them, HGTV, HBO, like that stuff has more value. Netflix, and I think if Amazon gets involved, it'll be the same way. I think if Apple gets involved, it'll be the same way. They're only going to go after the one piece and try to bet that if they bid high enough, it still will be more value creation for Warner Brothers as a whole to sell the one piece to them and then work on the television piece as a public standalone entity and try to build that up to sell it later. That's what is going on. I see no scenario where Netflix would take on the TV side of the business, the actual TV channel, of the business. They don't want to be running a non-streaming network.
When do you expect some numbers to be coming out?
Weeks. I mean, I think it'll be soon. I mean, the fact that the intent was kind of submitted, they kind of initially said we were supposed to get a bid by this current week, which we have not. But I have to think it'll be. The reality is, if you're Skydance and you're the Ellison family, you had to know before you started this you wouldn't be the only person at the table, which means you kind of have to make the first move, knowing that you probably will have to re-raise to get this done, right? So that's usually like, these people aren't idiots. They kind of know the tactics here. So I think in the next couple of weeks, we should have an initial number, and that will then lead to what the competing bids are. I'm not sure there's going to be a competing bid for the whole thing. That's going to be the choice, right? It'll be the one bidder for all of it versus the bidders for, we're going to try to maximize a piece of it.
Do you think DC will be alone in any of these deals? Meaning it'll be alongside
the studio side. What I'm curious to see is, just based upon the size and the numbers, Apple and Amazon ought to be able to bid higher than Netflix if it's just for the one piece. And if it was just the three of them head to head for the one piece, I would be surprised if Netflix won that. The question is, how are they actually valuing this, right? Like if you're Amazon, you've clearly stated DC has value to you with Cape Crusader and some of the stuff you've already done. So does that mean that basically there's no limit? Like why not? Like, wouldn't you just pay anything to get it under your roof and say, I'm going to make that back over time? That's where this starts to get real interesting. And like the catch, of course, is the Ellison family, the amount of money they have. It's not about the public entity. It's about the family, the old man behind them. Like, how much are they willing to put into this? Because they are big enough to go at Apple and Amazon, especially for the whole thing. So this is not like okay, if someone enters the fray, it's over. Like, this is very much a true competitive situation. But yeah, it seems like it's going to be an ongoing storyline as we're getting this next wave of DC projects. There's going to be uncertainty over what lies beyond, unfortunately, to some degree. But maybe in the long run, we're all happy.
Very interesting stuff, man. These next few weeks will be interesting to hear what sort of players are playing and what sort of numbers they're playing with. I know Zaslav must be like, having fun picking up these calls and hearing what these numbers could be.
It's been a tough road for that dude in terms of, what was expected versus what's been delivered. So, I mean, he is trying to extract the value. And, I think these moguls have such egos, right? I mean, it's a tough pill for him to swallow that at the end of the day, whatever happens in these outcomes, it's highly unlikely he will be running he's going to probably exit as part of this outcome. I mean, unless somehow it stands alone, but I don't really see how that will be the case.
Yeah, a lot of things happening with the WB, DC, Superman, Batman. Gunn has his plans. He's going at business as usual, right? Until things change. But for now, things are, straight ahead. Nothing's changing. We want to do this. We want to do this. This is the opportunity to do this. So he's going out there and pushing out as much as he can, as soon as he can, so that whatever happens, he's still the man in charge, at least for the DCU, and whatever content they can do.
I think there's a reasonable chance. I think the base case is that James Gunn survives this. I think if you were laying odds, he would not be, I would say, as I said, Zaslav is just inevitably not going to be the CEO, right? In these scenarios, that's just how it goes. As I said, I think Mike and Pam running the movie studio, that's a real question. I think it could be too many cooks in the kitchen, depending on who's getting involved there. But Gunn and Safran heading up the DC IP, I think is much more, you could make a case, right? You can make a case, because let's be honest, Amazon, for example, has already done business, not just with Zaslav, but with Gunn and Safran, right? This is part of the ongoing discussion of what's going on. So I don't know that Amazon has they don't have a person in-house who they would immediately be like, all right, that person's going to be running DC if we get a hold of it. I think there's a pretty decent chance that as long as Gunn has a couple of successful things on the board, he will be the man in charge, at least out of the gate of the new entity.
But the question will be with DC and James Gunn is, what hat will you wear? The hat of a CEO? Or will it be director, writer, producer?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's
fair.
do
it all. You can't do it all.
I think all of that will be hashed out. But I would be moderately surprised if in any of these scenarios that an immediate move would be James Gunn's removal. I would be surprised if that happened.
Yeah. Because there isn't a lot that he's done other than what he's done so far, which has been accepted, and people are generally excited based on the conversation we had in our prior show in terms of Hollywood and what they're thinking about these big IPs. DCU is on the rise.
And he beat Marvel head to head this summer. Like anyone acquiring the IP, he's going to be sitting in the room being like, I beat Kevin head to head my first time out. There is a little bit of scoreboard going on. He's got that right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a competition at the end of the day. Don't get it twisted. But yeah, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of all that's been going on with James Gunn talking about Batman and his possible casting, Wonder Woman, Netflix and their possible bid to get WB. And as well as, what do you think about Brainiac? Is it a one and done? How do you think this story is going to play out? Let us know in the comment section below. And I got to put in the promo, if you don't drink water, drink some LaCroix. I got to call them dudes up. We'll see you next time on the Nerd Gen Report.